Senator Guru,
Here.
Senator Rothfuss,
Excused.
Senator Hicks,
Here.
Senator Kinski,
Here.
President Driscoll.
Here. Very good. We have a quorum. Really, we only got two things. First one is we had a 6-member membership that we actually had a vote on the floor on, and the body acted. And with approval of the body, we're just going to let it stand the way it is. Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Rules Committee. I think to clarify, there was a vote on the floor to recognize the actions that were taken on the committee bills. I don't know that the action was to verify that 6 members or suspend the rules, otherwise to say that we were accepting of that 6-member committee. So I just want to be clear, and we can certainly check with the Journal, because I know that motion would be part of the Journal, but I want to be clear that I don't think the body took an action on whether we were, whether the body accepted 6 members, just that we would recognize the actions that have been taken to date. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Barlow, before you leave, I think Senator Hicks has a question first, and then I'll go.
So, Mr. President, Senator Barlow, do you have a recommendation to remedy your concerns associated with the fact that the body may have not have taken official action?
Mr. President, Majority Floor Leader Hicks, I think if this Rules Committee just thinks they want to take something to the body, certainly your prerogative. And if somebody on the floor wants to bring a motion from the floor, I think there's only 2 things. You either suspend the rules and have 6 members, or you remove a member by majority vote.
So,
Mr. President.
Mr. President, if I may, so I understand the options, but my question is do you have a preference?
Mr. President, if I could, actually my preference would be that a member just stepped down. That way there'd be no action of the body and it would be resolved. And that would be it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
That answered mine as well. Further comments or actions, body? I think it's just still left hanging. I don't have a motion. And thoughts, Senator Rothfuss?
Mr. President, sorry for my lateness. The weather was not as cooperative as I would have liked. I think that good Senator Barlow's suggestion of having the committee make a selection of somebody to step down would be the most appropriate. It is clear that it's out of order, but we accepted the previous actions and we've accepted it to this point. To me, it still remains appropriate that it be a 5-member committee. And I don't know if, since we last discussed this, the members of the committee have had that conversation. And I know Senator Hicks serves on that committee. But I think it would be best if for this next interim, it was a 5-member committee and went back to acting as a committee is supposed to act.
Mr. President?
Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. President, to my knowledge, that the committee has not had any discussion. I was kind of waiting for any direction from Management Council as to, so to my knowledge, haven't confided with the chairman, but I've certainly not participated in any discussions along the lines of a member volunteering to step down on that committee. So that it would be something that, if that's the direction, maybe that's the first alternative that we would look at. But I think if in light of that wasn't somebody volunteering to step down, then the next step would be to what?
I guess I'll make my 2 cents. I think we're down to maybe 2 or 3 interim meetings on that committee, and then we're into a new term. And I don't see the harm leaving the committee as 6 through this interim. And I do think this the Senate should act as a body to decide how they want to clear that up for the future, is which one it is in the rule book and how it works, and see how the House interaction. But at the point we're at, I see no sense upsetting. I don't think the committee is probably inclined to have someone step off of it. I think for the sake of the body, it's probably just easy to act with 6, being our body said it was all right with them. House hasn't objected to that as far as I know. So my recommendation would be to just leave things, but probably have it first thing in the spring when we reform, that the body decides how they want to handle it, because I do think we need, it's a little like this next rule we're about to do, we need some clarity on it as far as it goes forward. Senator Rothfuss.
In our previous statement, we made sure to clarify in the statement that it was out of order, and it is pursuant to the rules. I think the only thing that would be a concern for me would be that we would set a precedent that it's okay to have 6 members on a committee. And I don't think we've done that. And I think we want to make sure that we continue not to do that. The rule's clear. So I guess I'm not worried about us needing to change anything. If we want to continue with 6, I'm not averse to that. But I just want to make sure that we don't do that again, and that doesn't become a new practice. Oh, well, it would be easier to have 6. Okay, let's do 6.
So, Mr. President, to that issue, I think the way to clearly dispose of that issue that doesn't happen in the future, we would need to suspend our rules and then have the body vote to have 6 members on that committee. So it would require 2 votes, one to suspend the rules. The other one would be to go ahead and allow you the opportunity to appoint that 6th member. And I think that, would that address the concerns that we're more following a procedure versus an informal process of just making a determination? That's a formal process and a decision of the body.
Senator Rothfuss.
Mr. President, to the extent that it's already not been objected to, that was our previous ruling, was that it hasn't been objected to, that we find it out of order. We're sort of in that state right now where we've effectively, I guess, ignored the rules, is kind of how it would be. We could do that, we could formalize it, suspend make that motion. I guess I don't know what happens then if that series of motions fails. It puts us in an awkward situation where it's the reality, but we then didn't support the reality. It seems that if we want to leave the situation as it is right now, that honestly doing nothing is probably appropriate. And then our last finding would stand, which is that we found it out of order.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Drew.
I agree. I think just reissue, if the way the conversation's trending here, at least what I'm hearing, that we reissue our previous order. The rule is that it's not appropriate, but we're just reissuing that and knowing that and just say that we've said that for the duration of this, basically for now, that it's allowed to stay the way it is, but it is out of order, and we'll look to clear it up with the next committee assignment.
Thanks, Senator Drew. That's exactly what I was hoping we would come with. Senator Barlow, you're back. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I appreciate the discussion. It's very hard for the audience to hear you, just being honest with you. So either
Sorry.
closer to your mics if you would, please. I appreciate where the discussion is and all that. I would say that there is one other item out there that probably this body can't resolve, although you're all members. Management Council could decide that we're not going to fund the 6th member for a committee that's ill-formed. So I just throw that out there, that this discussion may not be over just because that still has to be done. Or that still is coming. So I just throw that out there, that the House is aware of this situation, and members of Management Council may say, hey, let's have a discussion about this. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Barlow. I was going to bring that up, as any action we take affects the House, and they may take others. So I think Management Council is probably appropriate to bring it up and to try to get to it. But main thing I wanted to make sure is that we had it was left on our agenda, and we also acted for the interim to make sure that we weren't endangering back to the deal because it was brought up, so that we are all in agreement, it's fine. I think with that, we'll just move on. I'll give Senator Hicks the floor. He's got an amendment. This is hung since the start of the session, so if you want to present.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on, I think that we should make an affirmative position on what our position is regarding the sixth member, and so I will forward a motion for consideration that the recommendation from the Senate Rules Committee is that we let the previous ruling stand, or I won't say ruling, but the previous decision to allow the sixth member to stand. That would be a recommendation from this committee
Until the end of this.
till the end of to the end of the term.
Senator Drew.
Question for the bringer, is that just to, in other words, to reissue the prior order? Because that had two parts, that we say it's not approved to have 6 members, but we're acknowledging that there is now.
That's a friendly amendment.
Yep. Everybody understand?
I'm fine with it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's passed. Senator Hicks, you've got the floor on your amendment.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and you can go either way. The only purpose of this amendment is just to clear up any ambiguity in our rules. We currently, under the rule, says that once the Senate votes for a standing committee, that membership can't be changed. When two reasonable people can read the rule and come up with different conclusions as to whether the president can or cannot remove the chairman, I think it's incumbent upon us to clean up any ambiguity. So this was a proposed language. We could also do it just the opposite. I do not have any preference one way or another where we say the president can. In this particular draft, it says the president can't once the Senate votes on the chairmanship. I would be just as well if it just said the president may remove the chairman at his discretion. So my purpose of bringing this rule amendment was to provide clarity and get rid of any ambiguity. And I have no preference as to whether, but I just think that we need to make sure that going forward, that the president has clear directives and the Senate, members of the Senate understand the rule, and there's no ambiguity.
Further discussion?
So
Senator Kinski.
are these two different versions? I'm trying to.
No,
they're exactly-
one dark ink and one light.
Okay.
Okay, I thought, what am I missing here?
It was a deep fake.
Okay.
I'm fine either way, and I think it's, I'll make a comment. I think at some point in the future, it should be where you can change chairman. I am uncomfortable voting for anything of that type with where we sit right now. I'd just soon leave it as the amendment stands, and it can get brought up in the future. I will tell you, having served and been president, I think it's really important that your committee chairs work closely with you and do it, and you be able to, if you're having a hard time working with one of them, that you find a way to change that chairman. But I'm very uncomfortable changing it in the middle of my term. If it comes later on, I think the next president or the next body can act on it. I'm comfortable where we sit right now with this amendment.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, if we decide not to do anything with this, obviously we could take up this rule and next year at the beginning of the next session, if that was the decision of the Rules Committee to say, lay this back, let the 68th or 69th deal with this issue, that would be another alternative that we could throw out there on the table also.
Senator Barlow? Okay, Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, committee. I would urge the committee to get this resolved at this point and not move forward. And I realize we don't have further session to deal with this, but I think going into the next session, I think we need to have it resolved. But I also think we need to have it resolved for the body now that they know that we and our leadership have done something that because we were left with a lot of questions after this, and it resulted in confusion and contention and discord throughout the rest of the session. And I would urge the body, Mr. President, to get this resolved now. I support this amendment, ask for your support of it, and let's get some resolve before we call it a session. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Dox there. I concur. I think we ought to pass something. The next body can change anything they want as fast as they want, but it leaves it solid for the interim that there's not going to be anything happens that's outside the line, gives the body peace of mind on it. So I'd ask us to go ahead and move it the way it is. Senator Hicks.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll move the new proposal.
Senator Barlow wanted to make comment.
Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Rules Committee. So I'm going to take a little different tack than my colleague and former president took. We were presiding officers at the same time. There are circumstances where a presiding officer does have to remove or has to potentially take actions regarding something that occurs with a member that is not a vacancy. And in my term as a presiding officer, there was no question something had to be done. So if anything, I would suggest you say some word of for cause. Because there are times, and I'm not talking about a chairmanship, Mr. Chairman, but this includes no change of anybody on a member. There are times that a presiding officer may encounter, and I did, where a change was required. And you can either get that done voluntarily, and if it's not voluntarily, then a presiding officer has a duty, I believe, can have a duty to act. And any more than that, I can't share with you unless we were in a different session. But I do think for cause, I think there should be some accommodation for that. Mr. President, the second thing I would say is this requires a 2/3 vote of the body to amend these rules. And anyway, I just throw that out there. If we're going to take this to the body on the last day of session, it takes a 2/3. I'd much rather have maybe an informal or potentially an informal discussion about if there's going to be any change with the current leadership, that the leadership confers and it goes to maybe management council, and it's just an informal or an understanding within that realm. And then that 68th can take this up and get the right language, because Mr. President, again, I think that there are circumstances this does not contemplate. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I would ask Matt, we have another provision, and I don't have it right on there, that the president can still remove members, any member, because of a number of actions. Most of them are criminal actions or some other actions. Would that address the issue of cause, or is that much more narrowly constructed for that?
Mr. Chairman and Senator Hicks, it's a really good question, because the two houses differ on this removal of a committee member by the presiding officer. The House has, the Speaker has much more latitude in being able to remove a member from a committee than the President of the Senate does. I think that the Senate rules are clear that once members are appointed, someone can't actually be removed from a committee except by a full vote of the Senate. Now, the Senate President may find there's extraordinary circumstances that requires the President to act in a certain circumstance for the protection of the public or other members of the committee, but that's really not spelled out in your rules. And frankly, it's just hasn't been as black and white in the House before, that the Speaker is prohibited from doing that. He's not really granted that authority either. But when Senator Barlow was Speaker and speakers previously had acted on that for the good of the body.
So I think this is appropriate for now, but I agree with both Senator Dox there and Barlow. I think there's actually some other areas that are going to have to go in there. We've all seen committee swaps in the middle as well. Someone resigns and you actually realign committees. And I think there needs to be some anticipation, if you're doing it, that some of that can happen. I don't think we have the time right now. I think this gives us the stability, this amendment, to get us through to the next legislature, and they can deal with it in a different fashion, and I would be much more comfortable with that personally. So I'd ask us just to pass this as is, and if we got a problem in the middle of it, we'll figure out how to deal with it. But I don't anticipate anything. We're down to kind of an off-session interim coming up. Further comments?
You said a motion, Mr. President.
The motion's been made. We're debating the motion. It's been made, so if there's no further debate, we'll call the question on it.
Mr.
Senator-
President, I don't know that there was a second on the motion.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
No.
Motion's passed, 1 no. That concludes, we're adjourned unless there's any other issues to be brought forward. Thank you. Where do you want to go?
Go to your office.
Mine?
Well, let's go to Matt's.
What's that?
Let's go to